Welcome back to H-Lock Gaming, This Week in Godforge, Episode 11. I wanted to thank the people that subscribed last week. I only got notified about one of them, but actually seems like I got a couple, so thanks for that. The small victories keep me going here. And as we saw this week, the announcement trailer's looking, I don't even know, incredible, magnificent, glorious, awesome, any type of word you can think of to explain how great something is. And related to that, that's actually the first thing I'm going to get into as I talked about in my video. I'll try and put a little link card up somewhere. Like, I don't know where it pops up, somewhere up here. I've never actually used that feature in YouTube. So I guess if I can't get it to work, I'll just link down below. But yeah, I did a bit of a brief breakdown. Now I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into some stuff I saw on screen. I don't know if it means anything or not, but let's take a look. All right, this is the clearest screenshot I could get in terms of these symbols right here. And not because I couldn't grab a good screenshot, because of kind of this mist or smoke or power emanating from this, pedestal with this, I don't know what you call it, chalice with power coming out of it, or a brazier, I don't know. Either way, I was wondering, what are these symbols? I have found something for all of them. I don't know if it's 100% accurate, so some of it might be a guess. But let's start with the one I'm pretty sure on, which is this one right here, which I'll label 1. As far as I can tell, that is the Eye of Horus, and we knew Horus was in the game, so nothing big there. We see Ra in the trailer, so 2 Egyptian gods so far, so nothing too big there other than kind of determining what that is. Now we'll move to what I'm going to label number 2. So that is the Star of Ishtar as far as I can tell. It looks like it has 8 points. It's kind of hard to see due to the, smoke like I was talking about earlier, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So does that mean Ishtar is in the game as well? So I would think if she was in the game, she would actually be in the same faction as Gilgamesh. And as we saw later in the video, he destroys this. So interesting there, right? What is this symbolizing? Ishtar is associated with love, war, and fertility. So not really sure if that tells us more about what this chamber might be. We have Horus and then Ishtar so far. All right, let's move on to what I'm going to call number 3. This is the Triskelius. I think that's how you say it. Hold on, let me look up how it's spelled so I can spell it out for you guys. Triskelion. And I found this has been used in Greek cultures. It was on some of the soldiers' shield. It's also been associated with Medusa and Perseus. So possibly this is representing the Olympus faction, maybe even somehow hinting at Medusa. I don't know. We haven't seen Perseus in the game that I'm aware of, so I don't know if that's symbolizing him. So maybe we have, Ishtar, Horus, Medusa, or Perseus. 3 different gods so far, representing 3 different factions. All right, number 4. So what I found this is called is Vulcanut. Let me spell that again. Valknut. From what I found, this is connected with Germanic, or one of the things I found is connected with Germanic cultures, which, is sort of near Slavic culture. So I thought maybe they're using it for that. That I'm not so sure about. But the next part, which is a bit more interesting, is I found that it's associated with Odin. It's called the mental binds of Odin. It's associated with the power of the gods. And the reason that's interesting is because I did talk about in my breakdown with Gilgamesh, there's a white and a black bird that symbolize essentially good and evil, or God and the devil. So I said, is this representing evil and we're seeing Gilgamesh influenced by evil, or is this Odin's bird? So if it is Odin's bird, that would kind of match up with this. And then we have, possibly 4 different factions and gods or myths represented here. But that still doesn't answer the question why he's destroying this, and is Gilgamesh on the side of good or evil in this instance? So that's what I found so far with these symbols that we were able to see. You can see on this side, it's hard to see. Let's see if I can change this into a pointer so it can. I can't. Either way, so I'll just make a line right here. You can see there's another pillar. So possibly, if you're thinking of the perspective on this, where we're looking from, there's 2 other pillars that could show other factions, and maybe there's something on here we can't see. So maybe this will sort of show all the starting factions we have in the game so far. So perhaps this is the Godforge, and Gilgamesh is destroying it for unknown purposes. Guess we'll have to wait and see once we get more information about the actual storyline in the game. All right, let's get to a leak that actually came out on Discord right after the trailer was released. Okay, so this is, I think that's Ragin, and that's actually a very cool name if that's how you pronounce it. I'm going to say it that way. To the Izumi faction, God of Thunder, if you couldn't tell. Artist Kelly Tan. Thanks, Kelly. Looks great. So the part I was most interested in was actually, so we see this drum right here, and then we have this pattern. You see it separately, and then you see it over here with kind of lightning and smoke or something around it, you know? So I was wondering, how is that going to kind of play into the skills of the god? Because you see it on the chest too. So it's almost kind of like, I'm thinking if you've seen, man, how do you say it? The Marvel movie, was it Shang-Chi, The Five Rings? I'm wondering if he'll almost use these kind of like the 5 rings were used in that movie. Like he might not physically do something himself because he has power over these drums or this device, you know, to kind of do his bidding. And I actually didn't even do that on purpose. There's 5 of them in this picture, so that's kind of funny. So that's what I was kind of wondering there, if he's going to kind of control these as objects while he just sits back and doesn't actually have to do anything because he's so powerful. And then over here we see his weapons. I don't know. I tried to find out what these might traditionally be called. I couldn't find anything, but I'm digging them. You see, too, they kind of have the same smoke, lightning, whatever you want to call, that's in this circle as well. So will he kind of direct them with this, you know, almost like a control rod of sorts? Like he's imbuing them all with his power? Interesting if that's the case. And if that's the case, will this be sort of one of those legendary weapons we can pick up and attune to this character to make him more powerful? That would make sense to me. And I would be interested to see what kind of a bonus you would get if you just put on someone else in his faction. I also wonder what his imprint might be. You know, this is a very cool design on first impression and potentially some very cool skills. That's about it. That's all I have for him, you know. Obviously a thunder god. We've seen a few of those so far. Thor the most notable. There was no Tuesday video. They opted out of that, I assume because Simon and Shem were, you know, at the convention talking about their game, you know, displaying it and revealing the trailer, which we saw on Wednesday. So next, we'll get to the Thursday podcast. All right, before we get to Thursday's podcast, this actually came out just a little bit before that. It's a reaction of them releasing the trailer at GDC. Notice the sort of techno remix of the song from the trailer in the background. I'm waiting for when we can download that and, you know, get a listen instead of have to just get it off the background here. But anyways, let's take a look. Obviously pretty cool, you know. I don't know what it feels like. I don't have kids, but I don't know, in a way, it probably feels sort of similar to having a child, kind of put this out into the world to show what you've done over the past few months. But, anyways, let's get to Thursday's podcast. All right, here's the Thursday podcast. We got Brad as usual, Sham and Simon as well. And back again is the one and only Darth Microtransaction, or DM. They actually kind of talk about that, what he goes by now. It's just DM or Darth Micro. Didn't get a clear answer, but it doesn't matter. We know who he is. We love him. Or at least I should say I love him. So if you think I'm biased towards Darth here in a positive sense, you're probably right. As I said, he's probably the only streamer I really regularly watch, supporting a fellow Alaskan. But with that said, let's get into it. So they start off with talking about, sort of how did Darth cross over from the gacha genre to now playing RPGs, which is actually pretty interesting because I love RPGs even more than gachas. And they'll talk about something related to that, sort of how the progression works. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. He talks about how he thinks it came from playing Diablo Immortal and then going to Diablo 4. He kind of kept that group and it grew from there, which is definitely true. I've been following him since the raid days. Actually, first saw him on Brad's channel when he had him on for a bit of a controversy, not between those two, but somehow somebody got like a free Dracomorph from Polarian or something. Something happened. There was some kind of drama. I just remember about people, or rather a content creator, I can't remember, getting Dracomorph. And that's when he had Darth on, and that's when I first learned about him. And I've been following him since then. So quite a while. But back to how Darth crossed over. I think one thing they don't really talk about that definitely helped Darth a lot, and I brought up, how long I've been watching him to reference this, that he put out a video that Asmongold reacted to, and like everything that dude does, his reaction gets more than the actual video, which is kind of ridiculous, but whatever. But I want to say Darth was around like maybe 80,000 subscribers then, maybe even less, to he probably went to about 224 within, a month of that happening. So that definitely helped. But you have to have the quality content already there. Like if people go to your channel and there's just nothing there, they're not subscribing, right? Unless you really make it clear that you're going to continue making that type of content, which Darth obviously has. But in my opinion, that's kind of the one hidden thing I didn't talk about that really helped him cross over, was that reaction. And he's kept it up ever since. And related to that, he talks about, how he's probably like 90% Stitch now, and maybe like Twitch. 90% Twitch and, 1% YouTube, which is kind of funny because I honestly don't know the last time I watched one of his YouTube videos, but I will every now and again when I have time pop onto Twitch and say, oh, what's Darth playing today? What's he up to? What's he think of this game? So I agree with that. Related to that, then they kind of go, they talk about, are the two communities related? Do people who play gacha games play RPGs? Now, Darth thinks there's definitely some overlap, and Sham seems to think there's more of an overlap than, say, Simon does. He thinks, they're more segmented, but I would agree more with Sham, and that also gets to when they kind of talk about MMOs in a bit. Well, Simon says a lot of the gacha players are old MMO players. Like when they had more time, they played MMOs, which is somewhat true. I played EverQuest. They mention World of Warcraft. That's what Simon and Sham played, I believe. And then Darth talks about being a RuneScape player. For me, it was EverQuest and then a little bit of WoW. So I can definitely see the crossover there, how it kind of scratches that itch. But at the same time, I love me an RPG. And I think there's also a big crossover there. That's why sometimes I'll get a little bit into the story when a new area comes out in Raid. It's kind of like, what's the story there? That kind of gets me into the RPG vibe. It doesn't hook me in terms of story long term. Like say, I think about Diablo 1 or 2. Like those are fond memories. I'm like, man, I should go back and replay those. Once I kind of get my fill of the game mode, even though maybe the sort of story part of it or RPG part has hooked me in, I'm not going back to like really rework. I built the team and it's like go back to doing what I'm doing. But anyways, that was kind of off topic, just my thoughts about it. Oh, and then they kind of talk about who their audiences are, and this further reinforced Sham's point that there is crossover. They both have, sort of the same age range. I think Darth said it was like 35 to 52 was like the majority of his viewers, and Simon said that's the same for them. So that was kind of interesting there. Then Sham brings up this point about how no matter what game you're playing, well, first before that, Simon talks about how almost all games have some type of microtransaction now. He brings up FIFA, which he played, which is just you buy the game and you play it now, which I haven't played in years, so I don't know, but there's some type of microtransaction aspect to it, which leads to Sham talking about how collecting is sort of a core human function when playing these games. It's just your instinct. You want to do it. You want to get more stuff to like show off your shiny tools or your trophies, etc. So then they talk about, how do you add that into the game without making it feel too pay to win? And then related to that, Darth brings up a pretty interesting point I never thought about, but everyone seems to agree that the reason it seems to work maybe with these people, this age range of 35 to 52, is because they're some of the people who kind of grew up on arcade games. Darth calls it the first microtransaction, which is true. You put in a quarter, 50 cents, whatever it is. I know they're more expensive now, but back in the day, a quarter you could play, right? So you're used to putting in these small amounts of money to play the game. And I never really thought about it. It's a really great point. It really does fit those people's model the way they grew up playing games. So that was an excellent point there. Oh, then they moved on, sort of related to that, because Simon talks about how they were old MMO players, like I said, and they want to just pop in and do these gotcha games for a little bit. And they talk about how a lot of these people honestly don't even have time to play, but maybe when they're doing something else, they're watching somebody else play on their phone or tablet or whatever their device is. So more people actually probably watch people play than play games, which is an interesting thought I hadn't really considered. Because for me, it's always playing first, watching second. But I can see, well, Sham brings up the point everyone wants to get to the end game. They want to be strong. They want to, feel that power in the game or have the good items, etc. But if you can't do that, it's nice to be able to watch somebody you identify with for whatever reason, personality, types of games, etc. that you watch, see them do it. So you kind of get a little bit of that feeling yourself, even though you aren't playing, which is definitely true. It's just something I never thought of. Then they asked Brad what kind of games he played growing up because, they talked about Darth, RuneScape, Sham, World of Warcraft. He actually said he used to play 16 hours a day, which is insane. I don't know how anyone has that amount of time, no matter what they're doing. And then Simon, I think, also played WoW. So, what Brad says, he played mostly RTS games, which is funny that they distinct here too between MOBA games because he says he never played League, but he did play, like StarCraft. And I think he said right now it's Age of Empires 4, which I'll say as a Brad fan, if you don't want to make content for Raid or whatever, a vlog of what you are playing RTS wise could be, still a good thing for those people who are missing their Brad. That sounded kind of weird, missing their Brad. He's not my Brad. You know what I'm saying. People who are missing Brad's content or Chofly, whatever you want to call him. Just think about it, Brad, if you see this, a little vlog maybe of what you're playing just to keep the channel alive. I know it's a lot of work, so don't hold your breath. They did talk about PvP and competitiveness a little bit as far as how that goes in the games and kind of how it helps them grow. Darth said he's not really that competitive, so really he's not the best example. So they didn't go too depth into that. But then Brad asks him, how do they kind of keep pay to win out of PoE because it's there? Obviously that's something they have to deal with in their game. How do they make money without annoying the fan base too much to feel like, oh, these whales are just whaling out and I can't compete? And Darth does make the distinction that technically you cannot pay to win. You can trade and there's different currencies in the game, but these sites where you can go and buy items for real money is actually prohibited. And people will get banned if they do it, or at least called out by the community for sort of faking a skill level. Then they ask Darth, what he's going to be doing next. And he talks about how last Epoch has an update or rather a new season coming out with some updates in it, I believe. I haven't really checked out the trailer yet, so I don't know. Very close to a PoE2 season. So he said he's not entirely sure because typically companies try to stagger that because there's a lot of crossover in audience, so they don't want to launch something new, that might cause them to miss out on players. So I guess we'll see. But either way, it sounds like more RPG stuff, which is what we expected from Darth. Then he asked, Hades, what's the plan for your game? And he does say soft launch is September, which I believe we heard before, and full game at the end of the year, which we also heard. But I was thinking about this when they were talking about it. The way this team reacts to information in a positive way, I would be very surprised if we actually have a soft launch in September with the beta in May. Because I feel like this is definitely a company that will respond to complaints or issues in a positive sense. So to me, I'm going to say soft launch is going to be after September, which is funny because after that, they actually talk about how Simon says he hates missing deadlines, but it's something he's had to kind of learn to live with in some sense because, they'll be pushing out a new build and they'll be testing stuff. And he'll tell everyone, look, stop what you're doing. We got to fix this thing because it's not feeling right in the game. So we got to fix that first, which is what made me think, okay, they're going to get some type of feedback. Like, you just don't know. I always use the term dancing bearware because that's what they called it when I was in school many years ago. And it's essentially when software developers of any kind put something in there because they think that's the best way to do it, or it shows off what they want to do the best, but it's ultimately a dancing bear, which is cool to see, but provides no purpose. So they're gonna find those things. You can have the best team ever, but the community's always gonna find some type of pain or sticking point that you guys missed because you went through the iterations of when it was worse and you think, oh, now we have it in a better place because this is how it was before. So of course it's better. So they're going to find something like that. That's why I think it's going to get pushed back. But kudos to them for what Simon said. It's going to be much more of a beta than people are used to. They talked about how now alphas are beta and beta is essentially pre-purchase or pre-release. It sounds like Simon's going to have a true beta, which I think is good. Then they asked Darth, would you make your own game? And he says, it sounds cool and he loves gaming, but he's also identified, he's like, I don't want to do business. I see myself as something much closer to like a comedian or entertainer. And he says, he sees all these people he knows making their own game, and it's cool that they'll have this legacy and be able to hire more people and help more people, etc. But he said, it's just too much stress, and you guys all seem tired, which is kind of funny because Simon laughed. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'll sleep good this weekend. But then Sham points out to him, no, you won't, because we'll be in San Diego at GDC, which is where they released the trailer. So the long and short of it is, no, it doesn't seem like Darth will ever make his own game. He said his end goal is in, 5 years to be sitting on a beach sipping margaritas. So different goals, but hey, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. Related to that, Darth's talked about how he's turned down sponsors that don't really fit with his channel because at the end of the day, whatever journey he's on, he says he wants to look back and be like, okay, I did it the way I wanted to do it. I just didn't take sponsors for whatever to make money and be done with doing this. He's like, I like playing games, so why not do it the way I want to do it on top of that? Which I'll say, kudos to him. But if I even get a chance for any type of sponsorship, at least starting off, I'm probably just going to take it. I'll admit it to you guys right now. I'm going to sell out 100%. Actually, what I really would want to do in the long term is more something like this, like a podcast. And my sort of idea for it was I actually got it kind of watching these guys and listening to Tim Ferriss. If you're familiar with him, he did like 4 Hour Work Week and the 4 Hour Body. I forget the name of his podcast only because I've been subscribed for so many years. And I just, it's there. I listen to it. I don't look at it. I just play it on my phone. And he interviews world-class performers to sort of get their thought process and tips and ways they do stuff out into the world. And it's a very cool podcast. but I am regularly listening to it thinking, as great as some of this stuff is, it doesn't apply to everyday people. So for me, my approach that I thought would be kind of interview guys like, you know, a Brad or a Sham or a Simon who started off in one thing and then moved to another successfully. I think I've talked about this before with Brad. If you kind of look at his story, he's actually successfully moved to different things multiple times. He was in finance, and I know he made Diablo content. I don't know if he was full time at that time when he did it. And then he started Raid, and that took off. And then from Raid, he's become a game developer. And it's not like he hasn't had his share of failures, because I've watched him for years, so I know other channels he's started that didn't really take off. But still, to go from, let's say, finance to YouTube to game development is not a typical path. And at least so far, he's done them all successfully. So my thing was, kind of talk to people like that who are closer to an everyday person. I know people listening maybe think, oh, if you were able to transition to making a living on YouTube, you're not an everyday person. But Brad's not a millionaire. He still had to do it to make money. It was still his daily job. In fact, he probably did it more than a regular job, if we're being honest. But he made a living at it, and I would consider that successful. So my thought process was kind of take people like that who are closer to an everyday person and get their thought process and kind of see when they identified when it was good to make a change, or what was their thought process leading up to it. And how did they identify, say, fear that was a legitimate fear, like maybe listening, hey, this is not a good idea, to this is just a fear of changing what's already known, going into the unknown, kind of that, like how did they make these transitions? Because I think everyday people can relate to that much more, plenty of people are jobs they don't want to have and either want to move to a different field or move up or another company. And talking to people who have done that will just let other people know, hey, this is sort of how I did it, and you can do it too. It's not impossible. It is hard, but it can be done. And then just sort of see where the podcast would go from there, just sort of interviewing people and getting their stories. And that was it for the Thursday podcast. I doubt, since Simon is I don't know, flying back, maybe still at GDC, I don't know, there will be probably no Friday leak. So I will end it here. Say thanks for watching. If you like what I'm doing, think about giving me a subscribe, trying to stick with that at least one a week. Somehow I beat that in the past couple weeks. So thanks for people doing that. Oh, and give this video a thumbs up as well if you could. And I'll see you next time. Bye.